All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Orange and Brown Talk post-game podcast. Dan Lobby, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock here with you following the Browns 23-20 loss to the Buffalo Bills. We are at Huntington Bank Field. Lance Reisland is going to join us a little bit later to look at what he saw from Shador Sanders, from the Browns defense, all of that stuff from when he watched the game earlier today. But of course, right now we're going to talk about what we saw. And Mary Kay, let's start here. Of course, this is what everyone wants to talk about, and you just put up a column about this as well. Shador Sanders. So, you look at the box score. Maybe you're not blown away by his numbers. 20 of 29, 157, a touchdown, 2 picks, a 64.9 rating, 49 rushing yards on 4 carries. But you came away very impressed with what you saw from Shador Sanders today. So explain what it is that you saw that you were so excited about.
Well, first of all, I thought he did a tremendous job on the opening drive. He really kind of took it downfield and threw that touchdown pass to Harold Fannin on the opening drive. So he rebounded really well right away from that loss last week to the Bears, where he had a bad game. He had bad ball placement. He just wasn't on point. So I thought he showed something there. And then I think more so than anything in this game, he showed his elusiveness, not just his mobility, but his elusiveness and the way he can slip sacks and sense things and get away from things. And I just think that really shows something. I thought he showed he's a gamer. He's got moxie. He's got toughness. He's got grit. He got hit another 11 times for a total of 40 over 3 games. I just think that he kept pace almost with the Bills and had a chance to beat them at the end, really. But I think more so than anything, one of the things that jumps out to me is the fact that look who he was playing football with today against this Bills team. He's playing this game against with a makeshift offensive line. Joe Bitonio is the only starter left standing, and then everybody else is pretty much a rookie. He's got virtually no weapons around him, or at least he doesn't have his chemistry yet with some of those other weapons around him. So it was really like rookie ball against a team that went to the AFC Championship last year. And I just thought he did a really nice job. He got erratic at the end. We all saw that. We know that he gets erratic at the end. He had some passes batted down. Some things happened. But for the most part, I think he took some steps forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, it certainly wasn't perfect. And again, I think this is one of those times, Ashley, where it's important to remember we are talking about a rookie. We're talking about a 5th-round pick. We're talking about a guy that got no first team reps until it was time for him to start against the Raiders. Like this isn't necessarily supposed to look like Tom Brady right now, right? It's going to take a little time. But to me, as I thought about this more, I think what we're seeing, and the theme this week was taking completions. It was taking completions. And I thought he did that a lot today against this Bills defense. He was really taking what they were giving him, and he wasn't rushing it. He wasn't trying to do too much. And I think this is just another case of all those little corrections, all those little lessons he has to learn that we've kind of seen in real time over the last few weeks. I feel like we're starting to see that all kind of come together week by week. Again, it's not perfect. There's still work that needs to be done, but it's hard not to be encouraged by what we saw today, especially after what we came off last week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, as you said, the key for me was taking some of those easy completions today. And I thought too, like Mary Kay wrote about this, talked about it just now, but the little Houdini acts he was able to play where he was escaping tackles. He's doing things like ducking to avoid Rousseau. And those sorts of plays were really impressive. But to the point of the checkdowns, like for me now, and I just talked about this in our video, I think the next step is not being so locked in to those checkdowns that you're not reading what the defense is doing. Because that second pick today, he was so focused on that check down, and you could see it, right? You could see it as you rewatched that play back on that opening drive of the third quarter. But Joey Bosa read what he was looking for. He was unfazed by Harold Fannin's block against him. He rolled right inside, saw where Shador was looking, got his hands up, got his hands on the ball, and that led to the Daquan Jones interception. He came up with it. So I think it was great to see him looking for those plays because, again, we talk about these incremental steps, especially with rookies. And that wasn't quite what he was doing against the Bears. It was something he struggled with. So today, against a pretty good pass defense, that's promising. And I think now it's like, okay, now how do you rectify like the one big mistake you made with those checkdowns that led to an interception? Because I think he can do it. Like all those traits Mary Kay's saying that he showed, that means to me, okay, this is somebody who can look at their mistakes. And we've seen it, right? He's not typically making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that in and of itself is also a good thing.
Yeah. Now, again, it was certainly not a perfect. I keep saying perfect. No one is going to be perfect, but you look at the end of the game, and when you mentioned Mary Kay that he was erratic in this particular game at the end, right? He's got the intentional grounding on 2nd and 18. Look, to be fair, we killed Dylan Gabriel for an intentional grounding out of his own end zone in New England, right? That's a play you cannot make if you want to win football games. So now that ended up being that was the play where they had the weird review, right? Where it was like he was in the end zone, but then he wasn't in the end zone, and then he wasn't. That was a weird one, but right, that was almost a safety. You can't do that. And on a 4th and 2, and I have to rewatch this play. I have to kind of see what was happening on this play. You've got to get rid of that ball on 4th down. Like that's one of the things we've seen. There are times where on 4th down, he's not getting rid of the football. Well, you have to get rid of the football on key 4th downs. I know people are going to hear that and be like, well, you're not being fair to Shador or whatever. I'm just saying these are areas where he needs to get better, and that's okay. Like, again, he's a rookie. He's a 5th round pick. He's learning week by week. We're seeing incremental improvement. So, hopefully 2 weeks from now, Mary Kay will be saying, hey, there's a 4th down where he didn't take a bad sack. There's a play where he made a decision where he could have taken an intentional, he could have thrown an intentional grounding. He didn't, right? It's all these incremental steps that we're seeing with him. And I think that's where the hope kind of lies with him right now.
Right. And I think when you look at it, he has come up the learning curve very, very quickly, considering that he just started throwing to the ones and the starters 5 weeks ago when he got his starting assignment against the Las Vegas Raiders. So it really kind of makes you think, what may have this all looked like had he gotten some first team reps earlier on? Had he gotten even some first team reps or more consideration during training camp? The Browns obviously needed to bring him up the learning curve. They really felt very strongly about that. That's not us making that up. That's the Browns telling us that, and we watched it with our own eyes. We saw what they did. They worked extra hard with him. They worked overtime with him to get him to this point where he can go out there and function the way that he is now. But each and every week, he learns new things, and it is a process. It's definitely a process. But I keep harping on this over and over and over, and I think this is an important point that I hope people can understand. Right now, results aren't necessarily as important as traits. He's showing traits to be a potential quality NFL starter. And those traits are accuracy, footwork, arm strength, mobility, elusiveness, toughness. Okay, these are some of the traits that we are seeing in Shador Sanders. And it's not always going to be pretty right now because, like I said before, they're playing rookie ball for most, for all intents and purposes, they're playing rookie ball against a very veteran quarterback and a very veteran team and a veteran coaching staff, right? I mean, Jordan Poyer's been around for a long time. Joey Bosa's been around for a long time. These guys are rookies that they're playing against, right? I mean, when you look at some of those big plays, some of the biggest plays of the game were, rookie quarterback to a rookie running back, to a rookie tight end, to a rookie receiver, to rookies running, around left end. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me when you consider the experience of these Cleveland Browns players that Shador is playing with, and how much different this whole thing can look with a whole offseason of work and with an upgraded and more experienced supporting cast.
So that's what's going to make this a complicated decision, right, for the Browns that they're going to have to make this offseason, because they are going to have a very high pick. I don't know where it's going to end up. The number 1 and number 2 picks are playing each other next week. If the Browns lose to the Steelers, they could end up in the number 2 slot by the end of next week. Now, if they win, obviously that kind of changes where they would land, but they're going to be in a position where if they really like Fernando Mendoza or they really like Dante Moore, they could take him. Of course, they have that Jacksonville pick too that keeps getting worse by the week, but that's some ammunition too if they want to move up. I know they have to kind of fight with the Jets to maybe do that. But if you take a guy in that spot, if you take a guy number 2 overall, or if you trade back up and take a guy in the top 10 or something, then that guy has to be your quarterback. That's your quarterback of the future. You have to commit to that guy. And I think, Ashley, the thing that Shador Sanders is doing is he's at least planting this seed of like, are we sure? Like, are we sure that Fernando Mendoza is going to be better than this? Are we sure that, Dante Moore is going to be better than adding a receiver and an O lineman and really going all in on building this thing around Shador? Or are we going to be better off taking a shot with Shador Sanders? You've got Deshaun Watson as maybe a veteran bridge if you need it. I know people love to hear that. Maybe you go out and get another veteran, something like that, to kind of hedge a little bit. And look, if it doesn't work, you just fix it all again the next offseason. But this is what Shador Sanders is doing right now. He's at least making the Browns make a decision.
He is. I mean, he is making his case. And look, I think ideally, when you look at the Browns offense and what they struggle with, what they have struggled with, like, I think it would be in their best interest to not have to worry about quarterback and do the second thing that you said with those 2 picks, Dan. Get a pass catcher, get an offensive lineman, because we know that line is going to need to be remade. And that would be great. The question is if the Browns believe with this 7-game or 7.5-game sample size, if Shador Sanders can make them believe that, yes, that is the route for them to go. And I've said this before, and I think I've said this on the pod before, not just our videos, that, I mean, we have seen Andrew Berry bet on small sample sizes with guys before, like at different positions, right? So who knows? But at different positions, I think about the Dustin Hopkins extension, right? I think about extending Jerry Jeudy before he had played a game here. Like, we have seen him make those sorts of bold moves, like not based on a huge sample size. So it's not unheard of. I will say, like, the quarterback aspect of it, just the position is different. But I think that's what makes this offseason and this choice so interesting as well.
So I said next offseason, and somebody in the comments said next offseason, Dan, with 2 exclamation points and a question mark. And like, again, that's also what makes this decision hard, because if they're wrong, Mary Kay, if they look at this 7-game sample size and they say, yes, we're going to move forward with Shador Sanders, and they're wrong, then they missed an opportunity to add a guy who maybe could be a franchise quarterback down the road. Because the hope is you're not going to be picking number 2 overall very often, or number 3 overall very often. So I'm not jealous of Andrew Berry. I wouldn't mind that paycheck, but that's why he gets it, because he has to make these decisions like this. But that's, again, I keep using that word complicated. That's what makes this complicated. We're seeing good signs from Shador. I don't know that we're seeing him, like, without a doubt, show you he's the franchise quarterback of the future. So I think there's just as much risk in saying, yeah, let's move forward with Shador. And then if all of a sudden you're wrong, now you're right back here again next December, and we're having the same conversation about the quarterback position.
Yeah, it really is going to be probably a tough call, and they're going to have to take a leap of faith, because they're not going to be sure. After 7 games, they're not going to be sure. But they just might feel good enough about Shador Sanders to move forward with him as their quarterback of the future. And of course, the corollary to this is you have to figure out where do you land in draft order. And right now they're 3. They've moved up to 3 with this loss. So that would give them access to one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft that are expected to come out. Fernando Mendoza, Dante Moore of Oregon, and Ty Simpson of Alabama. I think those 3 guys are going to come out based on just some of the reporting that I've done so far on this. And so they will have a shot at one of those guys. But if they continue to see from Shador some of the things that they've seen so far and some of the things that he showed today, then they can go ahead and mess around with those picks, maybe even trade away your first pick and parlay that into another first-round pick for next year. And then you find yourself with 2 first-round picks in 2027 again, and a number of good quarterbacks are expected to come out in 2027. So if you take this chance on Shador Sanders and it doesn't work out this year and you still feel like you need to go out and get yourself a rookie quarterback, maybe you do that in 27 and you defer the decision for a year and see what you have. But here's the risk. Here's the risk in all of this. It is the fact that Shador, even after these 7 starts, probably is not going to be ready 100% to go out there and win a bunch of games for you next year. So are you prepared to have next year be a quarterback growth and development year? Because that's what it's going to probably be. If Shador is your quarterback or if you're rookie, no matter how you slice it, it's probably going to be that. Unless you just decide, oh, well, let's let Deshaun Watson start the first few games of the season. But at this point, I don't even see that happening. I mean, if you're going to let Shador start these 7 games and you think he's going to be your guy, then he's probably under center week 1. So there are some big decisions to make, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to figure it out. But I do think that Shador is on track to prevent the Browns from drafting a QB.
Yeah, and I think to your point, if we are talking about, okay, so you keep Shador as your quarterback and you draft a wide receiver and you draft an O lineman and whatever, but you go out and you draft, you're going to add a whole bunch more young players to this team. So now you're kind of going year 2 of, you're hopeful that these 2nd-year guys take steps forward and get better in year 2. But then you're also adding a bunch of rookies in more key positions. So there's going to be more of that rookie ball that you're talking about, Mary Kay. There's going to be more of, your number 1 wide receiver might be a rookie. Your starting left tackle or right tackle might be a rookie. Like, there's going to be some growing pains there. It's not going to just be draft a guy, everything's fixed. I think the Browns have gotten very fortunate this year that a lot of their rookies really hit the ground running and didn't have a steep learning curve. But that's not a realistic case for all of these guys. So you would sort of be putting yourself in a position where, I don't think you're going to set yourself up to go win 12 games. I don't know that's realistic anyway. Maybe you are going to have to live with being a 6-win team, 7-win team. Try and sell Myles Garrett on that. Try and sell Denzel Ward on that, and some of these other veterans on that. But that is a viable path forward, Ashley, if you believe that Shador Sanders can be a good enough quarterback to win football games with some real talent around him. And I think we are seeing some signs that maybe he could be that guy.
Yeah, I was going to say today kind of, made me think, especially as the game wore on, right? Because I think the offense looked really good at the beginning, as we've kind of talked about some of that erraticness later. But I was sitting there wondering, what if he had 1 or 2 more really good pass catchers that he felt as confident with as he clearly does with Harold Fannin, right? And to your point about there's rookie growing pains and it's not always possible to plug and play these guys. I think that's true. I think you never know what you're going to get. We are the ones who joke about draft picks being a marketing strategy. However, when that draft pick is in the top 5, I think you're more likely to have a guy that is talented enough that you can essentially plug and play him. And if it's not a quarterback and it is a receiver, I do think it's just easier for receivers, especially, to come in and hit the ground running. It's easier for running backs, right? Like I think watching that game and watching it as it wore on and watching it in the second half, for me, I was like, man, what if he had one or two more really good pass catchers? What if he did have an offensive line that wasn't essentially all backups? I think it can look better with those things if they do add those pieces. I think it today made me curious for like what this would look like with more around him, and I think that's a really great first step to making this overall overarching argument that, hey, you should give me another chance in 26.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has looked better than it did with any of the other quarterbacks that they had out there this season. So, again, we'll see how it goes. And I do want to touch on one more thing before I let you guys go and we bring Lance in. And that, of course, is Quinshon Judkins. His season is over. So, speaking of those rookies, his season is done. A pretty gruesome injury. But the good news is, Mary Kay, you reported earlier today that it's about a 4 or 5 month timeline. He'll have that surgery. Fractured fibula, dislocated ankle, like I said, pretty gruesome. But assuming that timeline, assuming, that he doesn't have to knock much rust off, that puts him on the field again in the spring. He can kind of slow play it a little bit. It certainly puts him in a spot where he could maybe be full contact by training camp. So, Judkins, we talk about these young guys, a really nice pick by the Browns. I know the run game has struggled a little bit with the offensive line issues, but I mean, we saw some real promise with Quinshon. Leads all rookie runners in yardage, still at 805 yards. I thought was having a nice day today before the injury. There's really something to like there with Quinshon Judkins. So hopefully he'll be back from this injury 100%. He'll look like the Quinshon we saw this rookie year, because it seems like there's some juice there with this guy.
Yeah, it really does. And he had made the news in the previous 3 or 4 weeks because the running game had sort of tailed off. But of course, that is going to happen when your offensive line, there's so much attrition on that line, and you just keep losing guy after guy after guy on your offensive line. And then you fall behind in games. You're not converting third downs. It's very difficult to sustain the run and to build on it and to keep it going. So I think those were the reasons that he had dropped off some. I don't think it was because his running ability by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think it was that at all. So he is the runner the Browns thought he was going to be. He's an adequate replacement for Nick Chubb. And as you mentioned, the good news is that if it goes the way that it's expected to, he could be on that field for spring ball and in that offseason program to a certain extent. I'm sure they'll take it easy with him and he'll ease his way back into the lineup. But from what I can gather and from what I've been told, he should be ready to go by the start of next season. So that's great news for the Browns because they will certainly need him. And it's really unfortunate that happened to him today. He was off to a great start, and it was really disappointing to see that happen.
Yeah, and I think they were starting, they were really trying to emphasize him in the passing game today. Of course, he had the drop that turned into the interception. I don't know how we want to grade that one specifically. I know how our YouTube commenters would want to grade that one. But probably a ball that he should have caught a little bit behind him. It turns into a pick, but he was getting used in the pass game more. A couple of weeks ago, he had that big screen play. I mean, the Browns were really using the screen game a lot today, and I think he could have had a big day doing that. So Ashley, again, we're going to evaluate all of these rookies as we get to the end of the year and sort of look at their seasons collectively. And so with Judkins' season coming to an end today, maybe not perfect. Again, there's that word, maybe not everything you wanted it to be, but man, he looked really good in some spots, especially once he got on that field after he signed that contract in week 1.
He did. And look, I think he is also a guy we talk about. Could Shador Sanders benefit from a few more pieces around him? I think Quinshon Judkins would benefit just as much, if not more, from another really first round talent, very good pass catcher. Just because I think Quinshon was at his best in some of those earlier games in the season, right? Like you'd see him getting closer to 100 yards and his yards per carry average was up. The biggest issues with him became facing all these stacked boxes because really it was at its worst before Shador Sanders took over the starting job. Just the inability of the offense to generate explosive passing plays downfield. So it made it very easy for opposing defenses to latch on to him as like one of the key contributors. But I think as we've seen Shador improve, like defenses have had to remain a little bit like they're still stacking the box, I think, in certain situations, but they've had to remain a little bit more honest because of some of those explosive plays to guys like Isaiah Bond or Harold Fannin, and especially Harold's ability to pick up yards after contact and break multiple tackles sometimes on these completions. So I think if you can get more rookie talent in the passing game on this team next year, that's going to be big, not just for Shador Sanders or whoever the quarterback is, but for Quinshon Judkins as well.
Mary Kay, you ready for another week of Myles Garrett watch?
Well, no. I the story is getting really long. I've been writing a just in case Miles story for 4 weeks now. And every single week I just go and I add some more onto the top because now they're playing this team. And then then I have to have quotes from Josh Allen and Sean McDermott. And I still have stuff from other games. And so right now the story is probably like 2,500 words and it's just getting way too long. So yeah, I really thought it was going to happen today. And, teams are just so determined not to let it happen. And next week, of course, they are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. And certainly Aaron Rodgers is not going to want to be the sack victim for the sack record. But it's going to happen in one of these next two games against the Pittsburgh Steelers or against the Cincinnati Bengals. So he's got two more chances to do it. He only needs one sack right now, and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of next week, probably next week at home. He wants it to be at home. He wants it to be in a victory. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's been a long time coming over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, Michael Strahan got that big favor for Brett Favre a few years ago when he broke the record. A few years ago, 24 years ago, when he broke the record. Nobody seems to want to help Myles Garrett out, Ashley. I mean, Josh Allen was rolling away from him, getting the ball out quick. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to do the same. Nobody seems eager to do any favors for Myles.
No, they don't. Everyone, week after week, we hear these teams talk about they don't want to be on that NFL Films highlight tape that's going to get shown for the rest of time when Myles breaks this record. But like to the larger point of Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers and having to deal with them here next week, I thought it was funny today that when Myles got asked in the post-game presser if he's noticed more everything going away from him and the rolling quarterbacks, that at the end of his answer, he brought up Aaron Rodgers and that, well, we probably won't see it a lot with him next week, but he'll be getting it out quick. Like Myles already knows that this is the name of the game when you face him, and it's what he did the first time around.
All right, I am going to let you guys go, get back to writing, and Lance Reisland is going to join us. So we will send Mary Kay and Ashley on their way, and I will. This is the part. This is the idiot test part where I see if I can figure out how to get Lance in here on the air. And there we go. All right, so now I'm waiting on Lance to jump into that waiting room. I did text him, so. Let's see here. I'm still on unread, unfortunately, from my guy Lance. So let's take a look at what we've got here from. Let me find it here. All right, let's see if that worked. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Some stats for you guys. I want to change my layout to look more like this so you guys can see some of the stats as we're talking through this. So look, Sanders today. To me, the stats, and I'm really, I'm excited to kind of go back and watch this game again from that all 22 point of view because a few weeks ago he had that great game against the Titans, and you walked away on that Sunday and you're like, man, that was an awesome game. And then you went back and watched it on that all 22 view, and it was even better when you rewatched it. And I feel like this game might have those sorts of vibes. Obviously, statistically, not as good of a game from Sanders, but to me, that doesn't matter. I mean, this was an excellent pass defense that he played today. Um, and I thought he handled things really well. He did the things he was supposed to do. Some things have to get cleaned up. That is what it is. One of those interceptions certainly should not have happened, right? Another one, maybe that was on Quinshon Judkins. So, how much blame do you put on him for that? But I felt like he did a good job of taking what was there, taking what he needed to, and just kind of moving the offense. So I want to see what the next steps are, because the thing we're seeing with Shador Sanders over and over again is every single week he's getting better at something. And even I thought against Chicago last week, it was a step back, sure. But I even thought in that football game, I thought there were signs that he was learning. I thought there were signs that he was growing. I thought there were signs that he was getting better. And so I think it's not surprising as Lance Reisland. You can see him there. Lance, I'm assuming you can hear me.
I gotcha.
Perfect. See, idiot test passed, despite what our YouTube commenters say.
You got the right person on if it's going to be idiot proof. That's for sure.
I was just saying, look, so last week, yes, the game itself was a step back overall, but we've talked about this. I thought there were signs that he's learning the lessons he's supposed to learn. He's doing the things he's supposed to do. And I thought today was an example of that. What did you think of what you saw from Shador?
Two things that stood out to me. One is his ability to step up. So the things you're talking about with his footwork, not scrambling, not retreating, all those fundamental things where he's stepping up in the pocket, he's letting the rush go around. I thought that was outstanding. But more than that, he took the free meals today, and that's also a step in the right direction. That was fantastic. Those plays that he makes downfield, those things will all come when he checks it down. So those check downs that he did today makes him really, really dangerous, because teams are going to have to start playing more sound underneath, because so many times you'd hit that, it was 2nd and 5. And that's so big for an offense, especially an offense that struggles. So now you're at 2nd and 5. Now it's not just pass. It could be run or pass. So two things really stood out to me: his ability to step up, and then his ability to that control, and maybe I'll stretch it, but I'm gonna take that check down, take that free meal. I thought he did a great job, and I thought the one interception got tipped was not good by protection, and then the one interception to Junkins, that's a little bit on him. It was back shoulder. That's a tough catch for a back. So those are just little things. It's a ball that doesn't, it's when things go bad. It doesn't need to go in the air like that. Of course, that's should be just a drop. But when things go bad things happen. So. That one was a little bit on him. The other one was tough. I thought he stood in there and the ball just got batted. So, I thought it was a pretty solid performance overall, and made some big plays, stood in there on the screens, and those things are hard to do. There were some improvements. There's things you can see that get you excited about a guy who's learning on the job, and he's doing a nice job.
So I'm glad you brought up the screens, because that's another thing. Before you came on, I was talking about how on Mondays I like to go back, and that's when I get a chance to watch that all 22 view, and that's when you really kind of learn what he's seeing and what it looks like, and is he missing things, is he not. And I think the screen game has been a little bit hit and miss. Not his fault. I think a lot of it is the O-line, right? Like the O-line's been messy, a bunch of backups, guys in and out. That's such a timing play. Today, the screen game was really good. And I'm thinking of that one, the Travion Williams big screen, the 26-yarder. I mean, he had to hang in there and take a shot and deliver it. And I think screen passes are some of the hardest passes to execute in the NFL, because as a quarterback, that offensive line is letting guys through, and you're going to get hit, and you got to deliver a ball on time and accurately so that running back or whoever it is, tight end, whoever's catching that screen, has a chance to make a play after they catch it. And I thought the screen game was really good today. And that was in large part due to his ability, his timing, his willingness to stand in there and take shots.
Well, and the thing you have to do in a screen game, regardless, good screens are, you practice them, continuity. So the offensive line, that's been a struggle just because they haven't been all together. But the idea of, you have to make it look like a pass. And in the NFL, even at the high school level, college level, but especially the pro level, if it doesn't look like a traditional drop, they know. And so the defensive linemen know, and they will retrace their steps and they will go tackle the screen. So you really have to take a 3 or 5 step drop, and you got to hang in there, like you said, and you got to invite those guys to come kill you. So that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of gumption. That's a lot harder than you think, and he's doing a great job there. Again, he played with great poise. I thought he did some really good things, but some of those small things, the screens, the checkdowns, the swings. I think when I look forward when you guys talk to him this week. That would the throw to Junkins, that was on the shoulder, that was on the back shoulder, and he'll tell you that that's one of his things. He wants to, one of his strengths is putting it where they can catch it. So those are all the mistakes he's making from week to week. You can see it, and then stuff like the screens. That's kind of the moxie. That's kind of like I understand what my job on this on this screen is, and really it's to invite everybody in to hit you so you can hit you. But you have to make it look like a pass. You have to make it look like that. That's not easy to do.
So I want to ask you this because we were talking about it off the top. And I know for the most part, right, you're looking at these game to game, you're digging into the film, you're breaking down what you're seeing. But I know you've also done a lot of work on, I mean, you just put up a post, I think it was last week, on Fernando Mendoza. I'm assuming we'll get posts from you on Dante Moore, on Ty Simpson, on all of these guys. Do you think today for you was a step closer to being willing to say maybe the Browns don't need to take a quarterback in this draft? Or are you still open to kind of everything at this point?
Well, I would say this, there's two ways to look at it. One is that I think the things that you're asking a quarterback to do week to week in terms of improvement, footwork, taking the checkdowns, doing those things, he's doing a really good job of that. He seems to have a really good connection with his teammates. That's very important. If there's not a guy, I will say this: if there's not a guy they're sold on, then you need other pieces as well. And you have to balance: is it the quarterback or is it the pieces around him? And I think he's shown through these these games that he has the ability to make big plays. They don't have a really good offensive line, so that kind of hurts him with some of his getting to second, third progressions. They don't have a receiver outside that can get them easy yards. I think Bond's done a nice job. Jerry Jeudy's been really inconsistent, but just that, Dan, I love that easy yards guy where you have a guy that gets you out of jail free. They don't have that. So he's had to do a lot of things. Again, with this offense, everything has to be perfect all the time. So I would say his week-to-week progression has been outstanding. And the things you're looking for if you're not going to win, he's doing really well right now. And the idea of if you're not sold on a guy, and I'll look at some of these guys, but, he's making a case for it. Absolutely. And that makes the draft that much better. And if you think you got a guy in 2027, then, that's important. He's going to have a year of experience. And I still believe winning has got to be the priority. Great teams don't, tank for 3 years and then go try to win. It's the idea of would one of these quarterbacks be better than him right now? I don't know. He's shown great progress on film. What you're watching, his footwork, his fundamentals, his timing, anticipation, all those things you're looking for. He's doing a great job right now. So yeah, he absolutely has to be in the discussion, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. And I think too, again, so if you, again, let's say the Browns end up with the number right now, if they lose next week and the Giants and the Raiders play next week, so one of those teams is going to win and the Browns are going to move up to number 2 if they lose. Now, if they beat the Steelers, obviously that changes things, but let's just say they move up to number 2. And if you take a guy in that spot, that's your guy. Like that's it. You're saying that is your guy. And so that's the decision they have to make is, let's just say Fernando Mendoza for now. If Fernando Mendoza is there at 2 and they take him, then this is Fernando Mendoza's football team. There's no competition. There's no let's see who can win this job. But no, you're using a high value asset to take that guy. Your other choice is, if you've seen enough out of Shador Sanders to be a, the phrase you always use, right? A quarterback you win because of, a quarterback you win with. If you see baseline, a quarterback you can win with, and maybe he can develop into a quarterback you can win because of. But if just baseline, you see a guy, hey, he's a quarterback you can win with. Well, now you're investing that number 2 pick in a tackle or a receiver, or and I know people might not love to hear this. Maybe you're taking Caleb Downs and you're making a great defense even greater, right? And then you're addressing some of those other needs with you have a ton of picks, right? A ton of ways to add young talent to this football team. So the best thing for the Cleveland Browns, financially, asset allocation wise, all of that, is for Shador Sanders to be their starting quarterback next year. And I think that's something that they have to consider in this process if they see enough from him over these last two games to add on to what we've seen over these first five.
Well, yeah, and the idea of I think Caleb Downs is a generational guy. He's like I think he's super, and he's a guy like you can't pass on. But there's tackles that can really help these guys. There's a couple kids out of Utah. There's the Lemon kid who I love. Obviously, Carnell Tate. There's receivers they can get. Depending on where they fall, and I look forward to that part of it. But yeah, if you got the quarterback now, you could start filling other holes because in the NFL, college, high school, you can't be successful without a good quarterback. And it doesn't have to be a quarterback, like you said. It doesn't have to be a quarterback who handles everything. But right now, there's no pieces, right? There's not a lot of pieces that you can kind of see because you want a guy to get his second, third progression where they're not getting, 3.8 to 4.2 seconds of protection right now. So he's got to get rid of it. I think he's doing a great job. And I think, the steps he's making day in and day out, and the things he says and how he acts, those are all high quality things in a quarterback. His ability to stay, pressurized, not let the pressure get to him. And I'll say this, Dan, is everybody has said he's been sabotaged or whatever the narrative is. No one cares. And I think what's most impressive is that he hasn't bought into that. He hasn't played the victim. He's gotten himself ready to play. And that's kind of what it comes down to. And sometimes that makes you a little bit edgier. And maybe that's helped him because whether you agree or not, he wasn't getting the reps. Things weren't happening well for him, but he didn't hang his head. And when he got his shot, he's made the most of it. So as a guy who likes both quarterbacks, I got to call it like I see it. That's been highly impressive to me. He was ready to play when he was asked to play.
And I think to that point, again, we just see it each and every week. We can point to incremental improvements, and I think we're seeing just all these little areas add up. Um, you're not seeing the bad habits as much that were there at Colorado. You're not that we saw in that last preseason game, and then of course when he came in against Baltimore. You just see that he's working really hard to make a lot of these things second nature. The way he stays in the pocket, the way he's going through his progressions. Today, just that idea of you don't go broke taking a profit, right? That's what your guy Dylan Gabriel used to like to say all the time. Uh, he really is making these small incremental improvements, and I think that's what gives you hope. Is when we do sit here and point at, well, he needs to do this better or he needs to do that better. It seems like a week or two later, all of a sudden he's doing it better, and that's a credit to him, and that is a credit to this coaching staff for the work they've put in on him.
Absolutely. And it's being very, very coachable. And, the idea of what they're telling him, you have to believe there has to be, as a player, you have to see, though he's had such success in his career that you have to see what the coaches are telling you. You have to see that there's going to be impact, and you have to see that that's going to help you. And he does that. And that tells you how coachable he is. And, 2 weeks ago when he played really, really well, people were kind of hot and bothered because I said it was a team thing. And then last week when he didn't play as well, I said it's okay too because it's a team thing. And you're starting to see that like he's trusting his tackles a little bit more, even though they're playing poorly. He's trusting some receiver. He's doing things that are allowing his teammates to be better, even though they're not super talented. I've been highly impressed with just the like you said, the footwork. But more importantly, he's never thrown anybody under the bus. He's always kind of backed his coaches. That's hard to do because he doesn't feel that way all the time, and that's normal as a player. But you signed up for this position, and he's doing a good job right now. I was pretty impressed today. I just thought the way he handles himself, the game's not too big for him, and that's an impressive trait.
Okay, let's move on to some other stuff here. What's going on with this run defense? Because they were getting gashed in that first half again.
Well, we'll talk more on Tuesday. I will say this. I try to never, ever to break down a film based on what I see from a sideline copy because you just can't do it. But my early thoughts were, especially on the wide zone left, I can say this because they ran it a bunch today. So they're running that wide zone, which is to me is like a not a full stretch. It's not an inside zone. It's kind of a wide zone attacking that D gap, inside D gap. And what I saw was defensive tackles getting displaced horizontally. So they were on the move, and those big guards were just taking them and moving them sideline to sideline, which created a tremendous cutback lane for Cook. You had some missed tackles. I want to see the counter they ran because that pulling guy didn't even get around. So I can't wait to watch that on the all 22 to see who took the wrong angle and see what happened there. And then the defensive line gets upfield too much. But the getting upfield is going to happen. So you're going to get trapped and crunched and whammed and those things occasionally because that's the technique of your defense. But you cannot get vertically displaced. You cannot get horizontally displaced if you're a gap penetrating team, because then you leave these huge holes for these linemen linebackers to kind of have to attack. So again, I think for me it comes down to those defensive tackles. They've struggled since Malik Collins has been out. A little bit of depth issues today, so I think those guys got a little bit worn out inside, and they're not playing with great technique, and they're not playing. They're getting upfield too much, and once again, first time you get me, great, but then you can't take the bait every time. You got to play the line of scrimmage a little bit better, especially inside. So I really look forward to, that's my number one thing, is what happened inside. But if I had to guess, it's that they got horizontally displaced and lost their gaps, which created those cutbacks.
Yeah, and you mentioned Malik Collins. Mason Graham is playing with a rib injury. I don't think that has helped. I wonder if we're going to hear maybe a little more about that when we get out of the season here. Mike Hall was not out there today. I know that hasn't been great, but that is a guy that that has some skill, is athletic. It's just different than when you're calling guys up from the practice squad to have Mike Hall out there. Sam Kamara, who's been okay, he wasn't active today. So they're starting to lose guys here. I think we're seeing it a little bit too at the cornerback position. Denzel Ward has missed 2 games in a row with that calf injury, and that's put Miles Harden on the field. And he's just continues to miss tackles and just is not playing well enough on the outside there. So I feel like part of this defense's struggles is just some guys maybe getting exposed. Maybe they shouldn't be out there, or maybe they're more depth pieces and they're playing more than they have to. But the good news is Carson Schwarzenegger still playing really well. Myles Garrett still playing really well. Again, Mason Graham dealing with that injury, but I think he's still playing well and having an impact. I think Tyson Campbell has been good. So a lot of the pieces that you have circled as parts of your future, they're still doing what they need to do. And hopefully you'll shore up some of that depth here in the offseason.
Well, a great example is Mason Graham being a 3 technique in the NFL, and I kind of look at it as being a freshman in college, right? When you're a freshman in college, you're 18 years old, you're going against 23-year-old, young men. Now you get to the NFL, you're 23 years old, or 22, 23 years old, and you're going against 28, 29, 30-year-old men. And that's really hard inside. And he's done a great job, but it does wear on you. And the body shots over the course of 14, 15 weeks. And the way he plays with reckless abandon. So he has slowed down a little bit. And that's because of the losing Malik Collins. Now the double teams are going to him. McGuire and Alex Wright they've had solid years. But week in and week out, they have trouble setting the edge, and they get every single week somebody gets outside of them. So, they have some work to do. And once again, I think, the idea of, can you build on it next year? Who's going to be around? Does this scheme fit if the coaching staff's not there? There's a lot of pieces. Everybody always wants everybody out. And I understand when you lose, that's what happens. But a lot of these guys are having career years and really good years, like Devin Bush, I think of, because of the scheme they're in. Devin Bush is not great in a basic 4-3 scheme. He's really good in this pressure front. So, it depends on what they do moving forward. But, yeah, they've had a lot of guys play really well on defense, and it's been the one phase that's been pretty good all year. In fact, you can say it's been very, very good without the other 2 phases really helping them very much.
So the other part of this, unfortunately, is we've reached a point now where we can look back on Quinshon Judkins' rookie season because it is over. The good news, we talked about it. Mary Kay reported 4 to 5 month recovery time. So that should get him back in time for spring, certainly in time for training camp. So that's obviously good news, but a gruesome injury. Happy to hear that it is a quicker recovery time than maybe, I thought it would be. What did you think of Quinshon this year. Obviously got off to that great start as the offensive line struggled. I think he struggled a little bit. I thought he was off to a really good start today against this team. What did you think of his rookie season?
I thought he was outstanding. And the one thing I will say, and this is his greatest strength is something he's going to have to like kind of curtail a little bit. He's a violent runner, and violent runners in the NFL don't last. They don't have lots of tread. So as he moves forward, I think two things need to happen. One is I think he's an absolute stud, and I think he can really be the bell cow who gives you 12 to 18, 20 carries a game. But they got to make sure they get a guy behind him that can carry the load a little bit too. Not a third down guy, but a guy, a pound guy that can carry the load a little bit and maybe take some of those early second quarter runs off his plate a little bit because of the violence and how hard he plays. His yards after contact are just unbelievable. His contact balance is as good as I've seen in years, especially over the last 4 years working with you. The idea of watching every back, over and over and over, getting ready for games. His contact balance is just staggeringly good. I think he got better at pass protection. Got a late start, but I think he's doing everything really well. I think he's a full 3-down back, and they're just going to have to figure out. He's going to have to. I don't know how to say it, but he's going to have to learn how to not be so violent. I guess because that doesn't last very long in the NFL because everybody's so big, fast, and strong, and he'll deliver some blows, but you only have so much tread on the tires. And you see these basket worn out guys like him just because he's so violent and runs so hard and gives so much effort. So that would be, I don't want to ever, that's his strength, but really impressive, super physical, fits this scheme really well, and sad to see that today. And you know what, Dan, the thing I was really got impressed with last couple, his ability to catch the ball, really, really impressive. So full 3-down back, got better in pass protection, a guy who works really hard, really seems like a good teammate and could be the foundation of the running game for years to come.
Well, and right, that's a tough balance because that's what he was at Ohio State too. He was a real physical runner, and that's what makes him who he is. And that's why I always compared him to Kareem Hunt. Like I thought he had a little bit of Kareem Hunt's running style. Now Kareem Hunt, when he came into the league, was like an elite all-around back. You go back and look at his rookie year, his ability to catch out of the backfield, he was an elite all-around back. But as a runner, especially in his years here in Cleveland, man, that guy was a hammer. And
sure was.
That's what I saw it with Quinshon at Ohio State too. I thought Travion was more of the elusive, big play, home run hitter, and Quinshon was like, I'm not gonna shy away from contact. I'm gonna run right. I'm gonna run you over. If I have a choice to run around you or run through you, I'm gonna run through you, and that's what you love about him. But you are right. There is a shelf life for that style of running, but he also has to be who he is. And I think that's one of his strengths. And that's sort of why I made that comparison.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great comparison. And it is, you can't take away from his strength. So what you got to do is you got to make sure that you try to create touches in space. So maybe the violent running styles against linebackers and DBs sometimes, right? And try to create touches where it's not always between the tackles and he's, taking that interior pounding from 300 pounders. So, maybe not just, this NFL style of football, pound him inside because that's what, you can't take that away because that is his strength, but maybe create some touches on the edge because he's shown the ability to catch the ball. So do some things with him on the edge too, so he can get in space and then punish some DBs without always having to take on, 230-pound linebackers. That, I think that'll help as well. And then, again, you get in these games where you're winning or, hopefully they get some success where you can get another guy in there too, so he doesn't have to carry the ball so much between the tackles throughout the season. It's a long season. That's a lot of hits.
Okay, we're pushing up here on an hour. So, anything else you want to touch on here before I let you go?
No, I thought once again, I thought they ran the ball very well today as a game they were in. It was good to see Shador play in a game that mattered, some drives that really mattered at the end of the game. I thought they did a good job. And once again, I don't see any quitting these guys, and that's kind of good to see. And I thought that everybody who was in there played really hard, and hopefully they can continue to do that because that's the best way to evaluate people when everybody is giving max effort. And I thought they did that today. There'll be obviously some things will happen after the season, but the Browns are still playing very hard for having 3 wins, and that's impressive. And that's credit to the coaches and the players.
I'll ask you this. Do you have the sound on when you watch?
Usually no.
Okay, never mind then.
Why is
I was
it?
gonna
No, some.
ask you. I was gonna ask you if it sounded like a road game, because
I
man,
did
there were
have
a
it.
lot of Bills fans here
I had,
today.
it was kind of, I do turn it on and the radio is on upstairs. Sometimes my wife will be lifting upstairs. So I try not to just because I'm talking so much, and writing stuff down and things like that. So, but when I was walking into the radio station today, it was like, I thought I was in Buffalo. It was pretty crazy.
It was wild in the state.
Yeah, it was.
I have seen stadium takeovers here before. I have never seen a crowd. I mean, this looked like a Bills home crowd. It was wild, and
Yeah, we
I
talked to
wonder what
Mary
next
Kay.
week is going to look like too.
Yeah, we talked to Mary Kay earlier today, and she was like, "Yeah, there's a lot of Bills people here." It seemed that, well, I had it, I had it on occasionally. It wasn't as bad as what it looked like on TV. To be honest with you, the times I listened, it didn't. I thought it would be a roar, like a home field roar. It wasn't quite that bad, but it didn't look good on TV either. It looked real blue on TV.
Well, it certainly
mean,
was. Next week we'll see, because Steelers coming to town. That is an even shorter drive. So, but I think to your point, look, you played a Bills team that is fighting for a division title today. Next week you're playing a Steelers team that is fighting for a division title. So I think that's good for this football team. That yes, these games don't mean anything, in the win-loss column for the Cleveland Browns, but they mean something as far as the teams they're playing. And so I think that's good for them to be in games against teams where beating the Cleveland Browns matters.
well, you have all these spring camps and all these summer camps, and you and I are at them all, and we see these guys and they practice and they practice, and you only get 17 opportunities, right? That's all you're guaranteed every year, 17 opportunities, and you're only guaranteed, you're not guaranteed the playoffs every year. So the idea that you can't go out and max out your effort for 17 weeks after you do all this stuff, yeah, I think these guys will come ready to play. I think I've been fairly impressed with their mentality. They haven't won, and they've been frustrated, and I get all that, but the effort's there on the field, and I hope that hopefully that continues, because you only get so many of these. You gotta maximize them when you get them.
Okay, we're going to wrap up our post-game pod there. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're not subscribed to Orange and Brown Talk on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, we'd love it if you go get subscribed. We do 5 pods a week. We got a Hey MK pod. Lance is on Tuesdays, Thursdays, most of our post games. So go find Orange and Brown Talk wherever you're listening to your podcast to get subscribed. If you're listening on one of those apps and you want to get involved on our YouTube channel, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Specifically, if you want to find the pod, there's a little podcast tab there you can click on. You'll see most of our pods go up as video versions there as well. So check that out. And of course, Football Insider, I'll tell you about that real quick with the newsletter every day. You can be one of our texters. You can get through that paywall that's up there at cleveland.com/Browns sometimes. Just go to cleveland.com/Browns, click the blue banner at the top of the page to get subscribed there. You just heard from Lance Reisland. That's you're looking at it on your screen right now. You heard from Mary Kay and Ashley earlier.